Sex! Hi, I'm Maddie Brown. I'm a junior in high school. I just turned 17 years old. This is my transition speech, and my question for you is, have I got your attention?
Yeah.
Great. Since I was very young, I craved a kind of order in my life. I am pictured here and 1,000 other places wearing all yellow. If you remember me back then you remember that. It was because I deeply and fundamentally refused to wear anything else from the ages of 3 to 8. If my mom bought something of a different color, I made her dye it. That is not a joke. This is currently seen as one of the many early signs of my now diagnosed obsessive-compulsive disorder, but back then it was just cute. Because of this need for order that I've always had a plan, and it has scared me when people close to me say they have no clue what they're going to do. I wanted to be a doctor, then a therapist, then a grief counselor. That's correct. When I was 13, I wanted to be heavily involved with death. I actually applied to the funeral home in Soamesville, but was rejected on the count that I was 13. This speech is about my current plan and how and why I've gotten to where I am in it. Since I was homeschooled until freshman year, I read a lot of books growing up, and was practically raised in the Southwest Harbor Library. I loved poetry, Shel Silverstein, and the Berenstain Bears, but my favorite book was this one. It's So Amazing, by Robbie H. Harris. It's the sequel to It's Not the Stork, which was a children's version about the creation of life, which was actually narrated by the bird and a bee. Yeah, right? It was my favorite, and I was just so intrigued, and I love this book. I read it cover to cover probably in the 50s of times, both of these first two books. So I found this book endlessly fascinating. So naturally, when my older brother, 6 years older than me, Amos, got the third and final book in the series, It's Perfectly Normal, I was jealous. It was my most coveted possession for years. I wanted to read it so bad. Look at that cover. Look how intriguing that is. But the author advised ages 12 and up, and I was 7. I put it on my Christmas list 3 years in a row. I begged for this thing. I was just so endlessly fascinated in the world of sexuality and really what it was. So you might be able to see why my parents got slightly concerned. This is Lacey Green, a sex-positive activist and the creator of the hundreds of sex ed videos my mother and my brother found that I had watched on the family's classic first edition Kindle Fire at the ripe age of 10. My mother asked me why I watched them, and I told her it was because they were interesting, which is not the most believable thing coming from a person in my position at that time. I swear that's all it was, or I wouldn't have been telling you this story. I swear that's all it was. It was a childlike fascination. This is certified nurse and sex educator Dr. Sue Johansson. She hosted both Sunday Night Sex Show and Talk Sex with Sue Johansson. Both were live call-in Canadian television broadcasts where she would answer people's questions about sex. These were the shows that my parents and I would watch together when I was around 3 years old. This was mainly allowed because I wouldn't understand, and I liked the colors that she had in the background of her show. As you may or may not recognize, this is Judy Blume, the author of many amazing books, including Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which I read 6 times at the age of 12. It was old in my perspective because the women, when they talked about periods, they talked about the belts, and I considered it classic literature. That was also the first time I had ever heard a story from the point of view of a character, period, but especially one my age. And that fascinated me, that sexuality wasn't this weird adult thing that only you could access after you turn 18. Sexuality is interlaced in the world in so many different ways, and it is in all of us, and it is around all of us. And that was interesting. Finally, the person that immediately came to mind when thinking of inspirations for this speech certified clinical sexologist and sex educator Dr. Lindsay Doe. She hosts one of, in my best opinion, the best educational shows on the internet, dubbed one Sexplanations, covering everything from the basic definitions of male and female genitalia to different sexual stigmas and practices in other countries. After seeing that content and really learning that I could study sex as a job, like a career, and be able to help people while I was doing it, I was completely sold. Her show 100% changed my life. These next few slides are covering what I've done towards my goal and passion already since being at MDI and how I managed to figure them out. Writing. If you know me, even in the vaguest sense, you know I love writing. I think it would be on some level dishonest to talk about my life without talking about writing, because it has been such a part of who I am today and something I care extremely deeply about and have for as long as I can remember. Pictured is my first ever recorded poem, which my mother kindly agreed to scribe for me as I could not yet write. At the top, I signed it with what was the best of my ability. Because clearly, as you see, this is great art and we can't have anyone claiming it as their own. My name is all over this thing. So, at the end of the first semester, sophomore year, last year, I submitted to the Scholastic Arts and Writing Awards, and I won. First place ranking in the state of Maine. And it hit me like a truck. Because while I knew I loved writing, I never knew that other people would love my writing. Of course, I was sharing my work with friends and family, but it never really occurred to me that this is something that could make me successful or could anything be in my future. And because of this victory, oh yeah, sorry, I did it too late. For this victory, I'm still extremely proud of. I was invited to the University of Iowa's summer residency with their Youth Honor Center, Balin Blank. And there were other writing programs that I was invited to, but this one was my dream. The Iowa Writers Workshop is world renowned for their program, and so many amazing authors have come from there, and it's a beautiful place. So, after a lot of scholarships and applications, I was there for 3 weeks, having the best time of my life. I am pictured there at the closing ceremony, performing my prose poem, Letter to a Dead God. And I wanted to mention, really quick, some very recent news, that I was invited to have 3 poems of mine, of my choice, hung in the Real Pizza Gallery during their Oscar celebration as part of the Kristen Clintz Art Fund, a fund for young female artists on the island that help with the financials for Iowa. And I'm really excited, so when early February that will be coming out, make sure to stop by Real Pizza, you can see my art. Okay, well, you may be thinking, Addie, what do these two sides of your interest have to do with each other? And that answer lies entirely in speech. Speech. Freshman and sophomore year, I was on MDI's speech team, which is now sadly no more. And it was one of the best things in my entire life. It was performance and literature and people I liked. Basically everything I could have asked for in that kind of activity. Sophomore year, I composed a POI, or POI, my absolute favorite speech category and in my opinion the best, which it stands for Program of Oral Interpretation, where a student takes a drama script, a poem, fiction prose, nonfiction prose, and in my case, a song, to create a 10-minute performance that follows a narrative or clear theme, and that includes a memorized introduction written by the student for what you have composed and are about to perform. That year, I did one of my favorite things I have ever done in my life thus far. I made the program Nymphets, and using pieces of the Vladimir Nabokov novel, very little sociology journals, as pictured, but this was amazing, Dr. Gigi Durnan, and poetry and testimonial from sexual assault victims overall, it was to make a point about the sexualization of young girls in our culture and about what we can do to stop it. I won. It's a little gift. I won third place at states for this piece and second alternate at national qualifiers. Both things I'm extremely proud of, and I beyond respect the people that placed above me, and I think that they're extremely talented young women, and I love them. We call ourselves the Poi Boys. They were great. But this piece allowed me to do the research and work I needed to do to fully grasp what I wanted to do. I wanted to help people through work and sexuality, and now I knew how I was going to do it. College. My next step is obviously going to be college, and as Ms. Gertler has told me, if you're going to grad school, put your money in grad school. Because of this, I will most definitely be in state for undergrad, likely at Farmington for a degree in psychology because their program is one of the best ones in the state. Second to teaching, it is the most popular program, and I have heard very good things about the professors and the program from alumni of that school that I know personally. After that, because of my career plan, I am planning on getting my master's degree in psychology with a specialization in trauma. Fun, right? Offered at multiple schools, but the two I've really looked into being Lesley University and Grand Canyon University. The former of which I will be hopefully touring either February break or summer of this year. Well, what's next after college, Addie? Well, it's more school! And finally, specifically, sexuality work. And this is the part of my training I am really looking forward to. I would be going for my certification in sex therapy, which requires 150 hours of classroom education, which I can take via webinar if I so choose, because we live in the future. And it also requires that I have at least a master's degree in psychology, mental health counseling, marriage and family therapy, or clinical social work, which as discussed before, I will have covered. And finally, my favorite part of this, my favorite part that I'm looking forward to, is going to be in like 10 years, 10 hours of individual and 10 hours of group supervision case consultation, which is basically I get to sex therapy people with a kind of supervisor, a mentor, to make sure I don't ruin someone's life. And I will be able, I will be able to specialize in treating sexual trauma victims. And that also have the option to specialize in treating sexual trauma perpetrators, which I found very interesting. But, so all of this, it will cost $6,000, and with a program that you can complete in a year if you fully commit yourself to it, and with an additional $750 fee for the 20 hours of on-site training. Finally, what do I get? Where do I go after everything, after all my school and all my training? Well, hopefully, I combine my certification with my master's degree, and I will be able to work as a sexual trauma counselor. I would love to be able to work full-time at a nonprofit, but because I will have student loans, and because I believe everyone deserves my help equally, I will likely end up opening a private practice. So, and doing pro bono work for places like YWCA and Beyond Abuse when they need it, just have my number on call for situations that call for it. And so I am able to support myself while I'm helping as many people as physically possible in a field that I'm wildly interested in a topic that I have loved since before I knew that this was a real option. Thank you for listening. Hey, Piper.
How much is your school going to cost?
How much is my school going to cost? So for Farmington, that will probably be, it will be, because scholarships and such, and it will be under $10,000 a year. And undergrad, more than that. I know that I believe I haven't looked at this in a while, but I believe that Grand Canyon University is $43 a year. Not $43, $4,300. That'd be a steal. But yeah, that's how much that would cost. Hi.
I'm kind of curious what you think about, this sort of, it's new to me, it's probably not new to you guys, but the social damage caused by sexting and people's unwanted sharing of images.
Yeah, so that is actually a kind of sexual assault. It's like revenge porn is what is, if that's what you're talking about.
Yes and no. I mean, I think people also do it maybe at middle school and high school level without even realizing what they're doing,
Yeah, and that's part of this, that while I was exposed to sexuality at a young age, it was in a safe, non-perverted way, and it was something that I really loved, and something about our society, which I feel is unavoidable as the internet grows and society grows as it does, that that we're going to expose our children to more things, and our children are going to have to adapt to that. And I don't think that's good. I just think that's how it's going to be.
Have you observed anything since you come to high school you think is whoa, that's really hurting someone, and it sort of freaks you out?
Not to be a snitch, but
you don't have to use names or anything.
Yeah, no, there was a leaking of nudes that caused a girl to leave a few years ago. She had to move to Portland, and I remember witnessing that and thinking that that was the most vile thing I've ever seen. That I think that this is just my own opinion, that sex and sexual relationships it comes from a basis of trust. And once you violate that trust, it veers less into a romantic sexual relationship, into more of a violent relationship. Because you can't have healthy sexual relationships without having that trust between you and your partner. And when you share that with the world, it's no longer just between you and your partner, it's between you, your partner, and the world, and your partner didn't ask for that. And that is without their consent. Any other questions? Hey!
You say you're really interested in it. Did you at all think about getting a doctorate, going into research?
Well, so the thing about it is I love sexuality from... Yes, the answer is yes. If I was going to get my doctorate, I would love to study more of the social aspects of sex and the stuff around that. It would be more of a COA ecology kind of thing, and less of a... Even though I love science, and I will be going into bio next year, and it's one of my favorite things. I don't really want to look into the research, hard data, this is what sex is kind of thing. I want to look up why is this, what is this, and I would love to do that maybe when I'm old and rich. Hi.
I have one more question. Are you familiar with the work of Dr. Kinsey?
Yes. Oh, very.
Do you think everybody in the room is?
Hey, y'all, no? Okay.
No.
Kinsey. He was the first sex researcher ever. And it was in the 1950s. And if you might have heard the Kinsey scale, which is the scale of sexuality from 1 to 5, 1 being exclusively heterosexual, 5 being exclusively homosexual, with incidentally heterosexual and homosexual in between there. It's kind of confusing and kind of funny. I like the phrasing. But, no, he was the first one to ever, track sex and people's sex behaviors and, really look at what that says about society. I do enjoy Kinsey's work from a historical standpoint, but I don't really think that, because people still use the 1 in 10 gay statistic. That was from the late 1940s. I don't think that that's still accurate. So, but that's still the kind of statistic we're running off of. Any other questions? That one's almost.
Will you be looking at maybe cultural aspects of it too? Other cultures, besides American culture?
Oh, I would love to. I would love just to be able to explore the world and just be because there's so many layers to that. Because there's so many places. There's places where prostitution is legal. There's there's places where I would love to do like my senior thesis on sex trafficking because I think that's super interesting, and I think that I would love to travel and to understand all of the world, but I have one lifetime. I don't know if I want to learn everything I can, but sometimes I gotta like pick my battles of what I get a hold close to my chest.
Perfect. Thank you, Addie.
We're good?
Yeah.